What's up, metalheads? Welcome to another episode of the Talk Louder podcast, where we geek out on all things rock and roll. Hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel. Leave us your likes and comments. You can also leave likes and comments on our Facebook page. Follow us on iTunes, Spotify, Instagram, and our website, talklouderpodcast.com. I'm Metal Dave, along with my co-host Jason McMaster, and today we are joined by Jeff Duncan, guitarist, primarily best known for his work in Armored Saint, but also in Odin, the band that he was in prior to Armored Saint, and he's done a lot of other things as well. I'm a big fan of the Symbol of Salvation record that Armored Saint put out, and that was Jeff's debut with Armored Saint. Great record. If you haven't heard it, you need to check it out. Jason put this together. I don't know how you got a hold of Jeff. I guess your buddies from days gone by.
Years
Yeah.
and years. I spent a day in the studio. Most of the Symbol record was already recorded, and I was out there recording with the Toys, and it was 1990, and they were in finishing touches on the Symbol record, and got to hang and hear some tracks, and that was amazing. But I had met Jeff before that as Armored Saint. He was in Armored Saint prior to that, playing out on the road with a couple of records previous as second guitar player. I guess there's not really a second guitar player in Armored Saint. It was usually kind of a twin attack the whole time. But he had already been in the band for a little while before that. But we stayed in touch because most people know I am a giant Armored Saint fan, and I've been in touch with John Bush and these guys for years and years, and it's probably not common knowledge that now we have had, count them, 3 members of Armored Saint on the Talk Louder podcast. So
Yes.
This was only a matter of time. Jeff reached out to me, excited to throw his name in the hat to be on the. If Gonzo and Phil are going to be on there, I have to be on there too. I want to be on the Talk Louder. So I was like, of course. But there was no bait in the water at all. It was just like he saw their episodes and called me, and I was like, anytime, you can come on tomorrow.
Yeah.
But he's a busy guitar player. He lives in Las Vegas. He makes money playing guitar. He does recording sessions. He's got a couple of solo records out or coming out, and he's a gigging guitar player, whether it just be covers or, like I said, just work. He's a working guitar player in Las Vegas now. So, as well as being, when Armored Saint calls, of course, he's Tin Hut.
Yeah. And we should point out that, obviously he's been involved in the last couple of Armored Saint records, which have been very well received, critically acclaimed. Punching the Sky is the latest one. Before that, there was an album called Win Hands Down.
Before that, La Raza.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And before that, Revelation. So,
right.
He's been on a string of Armored Saint records recently, in recent years. And they've all been quality, as you would expect from Armored Saint. So, and of course, Odin was, they were a big draw in the Hollywood scene back in the day. Before he was in Armored Saint, he was in this band called Odin that you might remember from Decline of the Western Civilization, the Metal Years movie. They have a infamous appearance, I guess you could say, in that movie.
Yeah, and how would you describe Odin's music? I see it as kind of like this sort of crossover, sort of like Hollywood thing, but there's some like power metal involved. I mean, it's like, what would you call Lizzie Borden? You know what I mean? It's not it's not really theatrical glam as much as it is, or more kind of an early power metal kind of shit.
Yeah, I agree, and I love that you said Lizzie Borden, because that was one of the first bands, and actually Armored Saint.
Yeah, I wouldn't even say Odin sounds like Lizzie Borden or sounds like Armored Saint, but it's somewhere in between. Armored Saint is definitely not this theatrical sort of Hollywood
Well, they were in the day, they were Mad Max back in the day, they had the
Yeah,
armor and all that
yeah,
stuff.
I understand, but as Armored Saint, and you understand that they're barely like a metal band. Most of the time, Armored Saint, I'm thinking, wow, this is just a good rock and roll band.
Yeah.
Everything is really bluesy, and they're not a thrash band.
No.
And they're just very straightforward, almost like classic metal or even true metal, without being too like swords and sorcery or anything like that. They're not really, maybe the name connotates that. Maybe the earlier stuff had that because they were playing into the stage show a little bit.
Yeah.
Ever since kind of like Metallica's vision of what, that style should be, I think Armored Saint adapted that. Just, we can wear almost street clothes up here and kick your ass the same way, which has always been the creed of Metallica. So
Yeah, I think there was a handful of bands that came out of that era. I won't say the Hollywood scene, but I'll say that era, bands like Lizzie Borden, Odin, Armored Saint, that were, as you said, sort of, power metal type bands. So, but they had the look because you needed that look at the time, So they had the big hair and the spandex and all that stuff. But they definitely weren't Warrant or Poison or Ratt or anything like that. They were definitely more of an Iron Maiden, Judas Priest type
Correct.
UFO sort of thing.
That's right.
And I think, for better or worse, that's also maybe what worked against them to a degree, because the labels didn't really know what to do with that. It's like, here's this metal band. They're too heavy. They're heavier than rock, but they kind of have the look, but they're kind of they're too metal to appeal to the Bon Jovi crowd, but they're not thrash, so you don't know what to do with them.
Yeah, they were sort of pre Bon Jovi. They were sort of like a different. It's the era is almost there. It's a little bit crossover before that was even a way to describe something.
That's
because
what I'm getting at.
Odin and Armored Saint were playing shows with Metallica and Slayer.
Right.
And Savage, if you look and Savage Grace and Lizzie Borden and Ratt and all the early Metal Blade bands. They were all in this sort of club together.
Right.
And, who ended up, breaking, as you say, almost doesn't even matter. But just surviving as a young player in a scene and being able to make any noise at all is impressive. And I like how Jeff in the interview today said, I'm perfectly happy with the road, the decisions that I've made and where I've ended up and the opportunities that landed in my lap. I don't take any of it for granted. So
yeah, very humble guy. And I wanted to go back just a second and say, there was this handful of bands that came out of that era. If you saw a photo of Odin, you wouldn't imagine they sound like they sound. You would think they sound, based on the looks, you would think they sound more commercial.
Right.
But if you heard them and didn't see the photo, you wouldn't imagine they looked like that. So it was sort of this weird, and I think there was a handful of bands that kind of had that same sort of.
I'm gonna say that happens a lot. They don't. Well, how do you dress like the way you sound, and why should you worry about it? This is
right.
This is part of the. You make some bad decisions, you make some good decisions. Why? And you see the video, you go, "Why the fuck did I wear that?"
Yeah,
guilty.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, I'm sure.
Open up your class, your graduating class photo. Open up any kind of old photo album from when you were growing up, and you tell me if you're extremely happy with the decisions you made on what to wear to school on picture day. And get back to me on that.
Exactly. Yeah. Regardless, though, the guy's had a great career. He's been part of some great records, and he's just a real sweet guy. And
he's feeding his passion.
And congratulations to him for having that humility and being grateful for everything he's achieved, which is a lot.
Yep.
Jeff Duncan on the Talk Louder podcast.
So I was telling Jeff just a second ago that you guys have met.
Oh yeah.
You look familiar for sure. Absolutely.
You know what? We met at, I have a photo of me and you from the Symbol of Salvation tour, Cameo Theater, San Antonio. I actually did an interview with Gonzo in my car. We did an interview for my college newspaper, and you guys were in the parking lot throwing a football well before the gig, and I showed up and joined in and threw the football around with you guys. But yeah, we've met.
Well, you probably wouldn't catch us doing that these days.
You wouldn't catch me doing that these days either.
Well, it's summer heat in Texas, 100 degrees on a daily basis.
Yeah. No, I'm here in Las Vegas. It's not doesn't exactly.
Right. Yeah, you guys got a different kind of heat.
Oh wow, yeah.
It gets pretty nuts. Yeah.
Yeah. What made you and a lot of the world move to Vegas?
Well,
I guess after the crash of the death of L.A., kind of a thing is what sent people around.
Well, it was a few things. I was living with a buddy of mine. Had a room there, and it was cool. Great guy, good buddy of mine. And I was out there in North Hollywood, and one day I just walked outside and I kind of looked around, and I was like, I think it's going to get worse before it gets better here. And
wow,
it was an interesting story because there was this guy who had approached me a year before at the NAMM show who was writing a book. I wanted to interview me for this book he was writing. I said, yeah, cool. And he got back to me a year later, and he lived in Vegas. And so we just started talking about it, and he was telling me all these dudes who lived there that I knew, like Oz Fox and Ron Keel and just a bunch of guys. And I'm like, well, what are they doing there? Oh, they're gigging. They play here. And I go, oh, so, and then I ended up calling a couple of people I knew, one of them being a good friend of mine, Zach Throne, musician. He's out playing bass for Ace Frehley right now. He's, played with who's the Slipknot guy? What's his name? Corey
Taylor.
Corey Taylor's band. He's done tons of stuff anyway. And he got on the phone with me, and he completely talked me into it. He made me feel like if I didn't do it, I was stupid. So
wow.
I got a hold of another friend of mine that lived out here, and he was like, I got a room, pack your shit, get on your feet. It was supposed to happen. And so I got here.
It
and
makes me think of like Escape from L.A., Snake Plissken and shit. You were getting shot at and shit by Snake Plissken, and so I got to get out of here.
Well, yeah, and I got up and running, and I just I make a living playing guitar here. I mean,
yeah.
Been come December, I'll be here 10 years, and
whoa.
I haven't gone back to LA.
Right.
I just, it's better for me here.
What happened to the book, Jeff? You started all this conversation by talking about a book that you were interviewed. Tell us about the book.
Oh, it came out. It was a book called Tales from the Stage.
Okay.
The guy who wrote it's a guy named Michael Toney, and we did our interview, and we did it. But that was it was just funny how that was the impetus.
Wow.
Yeah, that got me here.
My sister-in-law and brother-in-law live in Vegas, and they DJ at the something Tiki.
Oh yeah, the Tiki Lounge.
Yeah, they both DJ there as well as other places, and she manages a PT's, which is a chain restaurant or something.
Right.
Bar. Yeah.
So
when they moved out there, they were trying to talk me into moving to Vegas for the same reason that all your buddies were telling you, and I was like, wow, it sounds like I could dig in there, but there's so much here that I have so many roots here. It would kind of hurt.
Yeah, when you do music stuff out there, it's the thing about LA. Which is weird because that used to be such a hub of rock and roll and all that. And now, I mean, it's just, musicians are just peasants. I mean, it's just horrible now.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
as you know, I was born and raised there, so I love my hometown. But
maybe devalued a little bit. So yeah.
But
that's what I was going to ask.
I think it depends. If you want to just if I'm someone who was definitely hell bent on wanting to make a living doing music.
Yeah.
I mean, go get some job or whatever. And it's a roller coaster ride, as you know, but that's all right. I'm. Was it you do something you love? You never work a day in your life. And that's what I want.
That's
right. Yeah.
You said that you've been in Vegas going on 10 years now, and then you just touched on the fact that something I was going to bring up. You were born and raised in LA, so you saw a lot of things happening before. You saw bands like Poison and WASP and Ratt before they were ever famous or whatever. So take us back to that time in your life when you're basically a kid going to the clubs and seeing some of these bands that went on to be, fairly well known, actually very well known. What was it like for you and the scene and all that at the time as a kid growing up in Hollywood?
And then tell us about Odin. Just go right into Odin. Right.
Well, I saw them all come up, really. I remember...
You saw Armored Saint come up.
Right, Armored Saint, yeah.
You saw Armored Saint come up, right?
Everybody, yeah. I remember me and my buddy Aaron, we were at, this is kind of how it kicked off, is we had our band, and my uncle was scalping concert tickets at the time. And so he paid us money to go stand in line at the Greek Theater to buy Pat Benatar tickets real early in the morning. And he paid us like $30 each to do it, whatever. We're like 16, $30, man,
Your uncle was Tony Soprano and shit.
Yeah. So anyway, so we're standing in line and this dude comes up to us. I'll never forget him. He's this black dude and he was wearing bandanas on his wrists and he was like, early metal, like early 80s. And he was like, you guys, you're rockers, who you got to go see? You got to go see Motley Crue. And we were like, oh, okay. So we remembered that and we took the bus into Hollywood and we saw Motley Crue at the Whiskey. And, there was probably 25 people there.
So this would have been 80, 81?
Yeah.
Yeah. Believe it.
And so we saw Motley Crue and we're like, whoa, those guys are crazy,
Yeah.
And then we just kept going. We kept going and seeing them. And I got to say that band got huge quick. But, and then we got into Ratt and we saw Ratt open a Motley show and we're like, these guys are cool,
What was the lineup in Ratt at that time?
It was Steven, Lauren, and Robin, but they had a different drummer, a different bass player.
Okay.
And then they had another bass player, and then they changed drummers. So I saw Blotzer and Juan's first show.
Okay.
Different times.
Yeah.
And once they had that lineup, it was obvious that was, the chemistry was there. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And there was actually a period, because as an up and coming guitar player, Warren DeMartini, even at 19, was awesome.
Oh yeah.
And so I would just stand up in front and watch him play and take notes, and go home and like, what did he do?
Right.
And he actually made the mistake of giving me his phone number at one point, and I just bugged the shit out of him. But I was ambitious, I had questions.
Well, bless his heart, man.
Yeah, and then there was a period where Warren DeMartini was out of Ratt, and the guitar player was Mark Torian from Bullet Boy.
Yeah.
And he was in there I've heard different accounts from Mark and different things I've read, but I was there, man, and he was in there for like 3 shows, and then Warren came back. That's what happened. Right. The EP hadn't even been made yet. It was way before Out of the Cellar.
You're seeing Ratt. You're not seeing Mickey Ratt.
Ratt, yeah.
Okay, yeah, you're seeing official Ratt. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, that's cool. That's cool.
It sounds to me like you recognize some magic in Motley Crue, and you saw some magic in Ratt. But did you have any idea at that early stage that these bands were going to be huge, or did you just think they were like exceptionally good local dudes?
Well, to me, because I was such a kid, and they were on stage at the Whiskey, and I was not.
That was already.
I thought they were huge.
Yeah.
They were bigger than me. That's all I knew.
That's how it was, and I think that's how it is in most of us who have aspirations to start, to be in a rock band and want to do this as a life. Your local pool, when you see the guys that are already up there and writing their own shit, and they already have like a shtick and everything, you're like, whoa, you know what I mean? It's really, really inspiring. You already think that they're like going for gold.
Yeah, because they're like connecting songs, and they have a real set list and all of that. Yeah, that whole pro show.
They had to learn how to do that just like we all did. So it's it's really cool that you got to see all that. Fast forward a little bit to what year was it, and what time frame? Is it around the same time, like right after you were seeing a lot of the LA, the best of LA sort of like start to snowball, that you and your brother started Odin?
Yeah, well, that started in that band kind of evolved. I joined a band when I was in 7th grade called the Termites.
Okay.
Wow.
And I like that.
Nice.
Yeah. And what happened was that I joined the band, and then the drummer couldn't be in the band anymore because he got bad grades or something.
Right.
And so I said, hey, my brother plays the drums, and so he came in, and then the bass. Long story short, I met Aaron Sampson, the bass player, in 8th grade, and he and the bass player that we had decided he wanted to play like different kind of music, more new wave-ish or whatever.
Okay.
So he wanted to leave, and I said, that's cool. I got this bass player who knows how to play AC/DC, so whatever, And then the singer was a guy that we got a singer, and he was a guy who I knew from where I grew up in Echo Park. Went to grade school with. So, and then we changed the name of the band to Tempest, and then we changed the name of the band to Odin.
Okay.
And then the singer ended up, after high school, he got married and moved to San Jose, so we needed a singer. And then I met a guy named Brad Parker, guitar player, and he was a couple years older than us.
And Brad Parker played one gig with Metallica.
That's right. And he was also in a band called I can't remember the name of the band now, but it was a band that featured Joey Vera and Tommy Lee.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Brad Parker went by a different name. I don't want to make it be about him, but there's legend and lore that
Damian Phillips.
That's right. Yeah. And he had like feather earrings, and when he plugged in all his shit before the band was even ready to hit the stage, he was just noodling, and
he was a trip.
Yeah, that wasn't what Metallica was about. So he was fired before they even made it, before Lars and James and them made it to the stage.
Right. Yeah. So, but I met him, and he had like this, because we rehearsed at the singer's garage, but the singer was gone, so we didn't have a place to rehearse. So this guy had this really cool garage studio he built, and he didn't really have a band. He was jamming with a couple guys, but he didn't have a band. And so I told the guys, I said, hey, let's get him in the band, and then we can rehearse. Right?
Here we go.
So
Here we go.
That's just called, kids, that's just called using your resources.
We hear this story all the time. It's like, this guy's got a PA. He's in the band.
Yeah. When you're that young, you don't know how to treat people. You don't know what you're dealing with. You're just like, hey, he's got a place to jam. Doesn't matter that he's a dick.
Right. We had to know it was, we had to survive.
I'm not calling Brad Parker a dick. I'm just saying it doesn't matter if the guy is a loony or the situation. You're just using your resources as a kid. Hey, let's go with him. He's got a car. It's the same thing. Right.
It's totally the same thing. And so we in the band, and we started jamming, and then we needed a singer. So he put out an ad, Brad Parker. See, he was a couple years older, so he knew a few more things than we did. So he put out an ad in Recycler for a singer, and that's how we found Randy O. And so we got Randy in the band, and we just started booking gigs. I started playing the Troubadour and blah blah blah, and then the first Troubadour show we did that was good was with Armored Saint, oddly enough. That's when we got to know them.
Not a surprise. Not a surprise. That was gonna happen no matter what. So.
It seems like it, yeah. So, and then once the band started, we started headlining ourselves, and we started getting popular and all that. And so right when that happened, we got rid of the other guitar player because we were making money. We could go rent a rehearsal space and all that. It's like, okay, well, he's out because, I mean, he passed away a few years ago. God rest his soul.
Yeah.
He wasn't keeping up with the band. He just wasn't. It was one of those things,
Yeah.
And plus, he'd kind of gotten the idea that the band was his at that point. It was like, no, this is our thing. You joined us. But anyway, so we kicked him out, and then once he was gone, the band just kept going. Kept getting bigger and more popular.
When did you start like seeing interest from possible labels and entering your first idea of making your first record?
That was around 84.
Okay.
Yeah, by 84.
Did Odin tour?
We only did one tour. We toured one time. We did like a couple weeks with Alcatraz when Steve Vai was in it.
Oh, far out. Okay.
Yeah, which was cool because
we just had Graham Bonnet on the show.
Yeah. I saw Graham Bonnet again many years later.
Oh wow.
Which then I reminded him. I said, "Hey, remember me?" Because I did some shows. I was playing guitar with Frank Domino, and which was awesome to play a bunch of Angel songs, by the way.
Yeah.
And we did a few shows.
Was it under the banner of Angel?
No, it was Frank Domino.
Just Frank. Okay.
Yeah, and we did a few shows, several shows with Graham Bonnet, and I said, "Hey, you remember me?" Blah blah blah, and he was like, "Oh." And then of course I told him how awesome I thought he was. He's such a cool, humble dude. He's great.
Yeah. So
no, we didn't really tour, and we never really we saw everybody pass us. We saw Warrant pass us, we saw Poison pass us, everybody. But we got mixed up with bad management. It's so cliche, what happened to Odin.
Yeah, I know. I know Dave has a question, but I wanted to get this off my chest. Do you feel like in the Penelope Spheris film, Decline of the Western Civilization, the Metal Gears, do you feel like not only Odin, but do you feel like some of the bands... I have a bad feeling about this movie. I have this preconceived notion that I feel like I know what you're going to say, but maybe not. I mean, I'm not you. But I feel like a lot of the bands that I'm a fan of were portrayed as just coming off like assholes or like deserving. But then the first Decline movie, The Punk Years, came off the same way. It was decadent. There was a lot of anger and people saying if they can't make money doing it, they're gonna kill themselves, shit like that,
Yeah.
And the scenes with Chris Holmes in the pool, it's embarrassing. It gives metal a bad name. I didn't like it. A lot of people love the film, and I see the pros and cons of understanding what the movie's about. What do you think when you see yourself in that movie? What do you see?
Well, I mean, first of all, I'll say that she definitely cinched, the editing and how it was sensationalized was obvious, because, like when we're in that hot tub and Randy says if he doesn't make it, he's going to kill himself. That was a joke. That was an old joke.
But he's not the only long-haired rock and roll personality in the film that says that.
Oh, you mean like the random people they're interviewing?
There's
those
a couple
people.
of
Let me
people
tell you something.
What happens if you don't make it? I'll kill myself, and it's not Randy O.
Well, a lot of those people too that are interviewed and being in that scene. A lot of those people were not even in bands. They were just posers. They were just hanging out. A lot of them weren't even in bands.
All right.
They were just wearing the costume,
That's it. Right. Ooh, I say that same shit all the time.
Yeah.
Dude, that is interesting insight. I never even would have thought that So Penelope Spheris is not staging that. These were just people like living on the strip that thought they were rock stars and more deserving than you or me or Dave or anybody else, you know.
Right, but they weren't even really in bands, or if they weren't gigging, or
they
couldn't
weren't
get,
working.
they weren't, or they didn't have ability or talent. They just were in the scene and dressed up and hung out and trying to get chicks or whatever.
Halloween, yeah, it's Halloween for them, right?
Yeah.
But so at the time, though, I mean, at the time, in hindsight is everything, right? So in hindsight, the movie sort of comes across, and I'm a fan of the movie. Don't get me wrong, I love it, but. It's sort of recognized today as sort of a parody of the scene, but when you're being interviewed for the movie at the time, you must have also thought it was sort of a catalyst of sorts. It's like somebody's making a movie, a big budget movie about our scene, and they want us to be in it. So what was your thinking going into the movie as far as it being possibly a launching pad of some sort?
Well, I thought it was cool, but there were a lot of cool things that were going on. So it was just another cool thing that I was like, oh yeah, that's cool. And, I was, in that movie, I was 22 years old. So,
right.
And I was completely absorbed in, the scene and what we were doing and, just everything that goes along with that. So I was like, oh, great, let's do this. And then, so I didn't really, me personally, I was just going along with everything like I did with everything else, Sure.
Well, that's what's cool. That's what's cool about, sorry to interrupt, but that's what's cool about you, Jeff, and is that you're a team player and you just wanted to play rock and roll. Sure, yeah. You wanted to write songs. Sure, you wanted to make a record. Sure, you wanted to tour. Sure, you wanted to make some kind of simple living at playing rock music and being a working guitar player. I understand. So that movie is, I mean, I hate the movie Rockstar too. So don't get me wrong. It's like the portrayals of how it really is not in either of those movies in my opinion.
But but Decline is a classic, man. I mean, you love it or hate it, it will never be forgotten. It's a classic, and you were in it, and so whether it's turned out to be a blessing or a curse, it's I think it's pretty cool that you're in the movie.
Yeah, I'll drink to all of that. I'll swallow that as well.
When I saw that movie, which is funny because when I went to the premiere of that movie, I was a member of Armored Saint at that point.
Right.
But when I saw it at first, I was like, "Oh God, that's lame." But then, as time went on, I was like, we just got filmed being how everyone else was at the time, and it's to 22, a young kid in the Hollywood scene. Your band's popular. You're partying. You're not really, You're 22 years.
You're young.
You're 22. Yeah, you're dumb.
It's not anybody's fault that you are who you are when you are who you are. So
right. So then I was like, well, I was in a movie being that way. Were you? I mean, okay, whatever. I don't. And as years went by, I had people come up to me. I saw Odin and Decline. I loved you guys. So it turned out to be a positive thing.
You guys have a huge army of fans. That's why I feel like it's important that we talk about Odin and your. How did that record do, and how many times did it get reissued, if any?
It got reissued once.
Okay.
And it did. It did well. It did good. We just could not get a major label to sign us. I mean, no matter what, it was just and unfortunately, when that happens, after enough years and you go through that, what happens is you start questioning what you're doing, and is it that guy, or what about the music we're writing? Should we be more pop metal? You start questioning that? And I think that's where the band started to fracture, was that we were not getting to where we wanted to go.
Man, I've always believed you should not change your fucking wardrobe or who you are just because someone with a bag of money or, look over the fence. Look how it's green over on my side of the fence, right? It's not green on your side of the fence. You need to come over. Fuck all that.
Yeah, definitely.
Be who you are today.
Definitely. And nobody even told us to do that. We were just like, what do? We got it, we're slugging it out, and again, seeing all these bands pass us up.
Yeah.
And it was just a bummer. I think labels just didn't know what to do with us, because we were heavy, but we had like this, the way we looked at the same time. I think it was just, couldn't really pinpoint exactly what we were. I think that was a part of it.
I'm sorry to move forward, but we want to keep moving because there's so much we want to talk to you about. Is that Odin record available? Can people is it like hella expensive collector's item price now?
Well, if anybody's interested in that record, EMP re-released it.
Okay, right.
Yeah. So they could go on the EMP website and see if they could still get it. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, I think EMP has imploded, but
I think so.
There's boxes of those somewhere. So somewhere somebody's got those.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I want one.
Yeah. Well, I'll make sure you get one, Jason.
Yeah, I want one. So
I wanted to ask real quick before we leave Odin. You guys were a big draw on the scene. You were in the movie. You were obviously recognized as being one of the top level bands of the time in the Hollywood scene. And you touched on it a little bit, Jeff. But why do you think, in a nutshell, why did you not get the major label deal? Because you were surrounded by bands that were getting major label deals. You were obviously every bit the draw that those bands were. So why not Odin?
Well, I think it was a combination of things. Bad management, we things like that. Too many bloodsuckers around us. All that kind of stuff. We weren't organized enough within it for us to be. Once somebody got close to us who was a label person, I just think it was just unappealing. And plus, everybody was, partying like crazy. There were a lot of drugs in that band and things like that. So, I thought about it. Obviously I thought about it quite a bit, but then it just kind of got to the point where I was like, well, because it wasn't meant to be. I mean, because where I ended up going was where I ended up going. So, I always looked at Odin as my rock and roll boot camp, and sure. If that's what it was, I'm okay with that,
Cool. Yeah. So take us to the timeline now from Odin to Armored Saint. How do you get involved with Armored Saint after Odin?
Well, we were already friends, matter of fact, we used to hang out. I mean, me and Pritchard and Bush hung out mostly. We became pretty good pals. And Joey too. I mean, all the guys. But they approached me first during the Delirious tour cycle. That's where they approached me first. I was still in Odin at the time, and I just wasn't ready to pull the plug on that band yet. And I was like, I got to see what's going to happen here, and it was a tough decision. I loved Armored Saint,
Yeah.
I still do, of course. And then it came back around again in '88. And at that point, Odin, we were just sick of each other. I mean, bottom line, we were just sick of each other. And Saint came around again after Raising Fear. They put out the Saints Will Conquer EP. And I said, yeah, I want to do it. And I joined '88, and we did the Saints Will Conquer tour with, it was us, and we were supporting King Diamond. And that was the first real tour I ever did. I did that, and then after that we started doing demos for what would become Symbol of Salvation.
Yes.
Started writing, and then I split. And then I ended up leaving the band. There were a couple of reasons. One, I wanted to get cleaned up, which I did, and have been ever since. And then, and plus the manager at the time they had didn't like Odin, so he kind of aced me out of a lot of things, and I really didn't dig that, And I'm not uncomfortable saying it because the guys in the band are well aware of what happened, So anyway, I left, and ended up getting cleaned up and
But
all that. I did my thing for like a year.
Was that Ron Lafitte?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
He did not like me.
because he didn't like Odin.
He'd see me and he'd be nice to me, but he'd see me and he'd be nice to me. But then what was going on as far as like, cutting me out of photos, just this weird shit that wasn't cool,
Yeah.
And at the time, the Armored Saint guys, I understand, they were like, they had just lost the Chrysalis deal and they had him, and so they kind of went along with it just because for reasons. It wasn't against me. It was just how it was.
They were holding on to were holding on to whatever resources they had left over.
Exactly.
To try to stay working, and
and I will say, in all fairness, in hindsight, had I been a little more mature at the time, I probably could have confronted that and got through it. But I was just like, ugh, I wouldn't react that way.
Not to make this,
but that's because I'm
not to make this the running theme, but because we were all young, and you just admitted you were young, and you didn't know how to manage your own wares,
right.
While you were at that moment in your life. And
but
Ron was young too. He was a younger guy managing bands.
Yeah,
it's kind of weird.
Yeah, and I certainly, don't have anything against Ron at this point. I hope he's good. It's whatever.
Yeah.
So
now, just to be clear, I want to talk about something that's a little sensitive because I met Armored Saint when the world outside of LA met Armored Saint, which is the March tour, right? March of the Saint tour.
Yeah.
In '85. And like early '85, I can tell you the date that I met Armored Saint, February 21st, 1985. And so fast forward, and God rest his soul, Pritchard passes away from leukemia, and Bush had been keeping me informed on the state of the band and where Dave was and all that.
Yeah.
To be clear, you didn't really replace either Dave or Phil, did you?
Well, no, because I had been in the band with Dave.
Right.
And then and I left, and then in the time when I was out of the band, that's when Dave got sick and eventually passed away.
Right.
So the band was essentially guitarless at that point. But after that happened, those guys weren't even thinking about the band at that point. They were just crushed,
Yeah.
And then they decided to get together, and Bush got a hold of me, and you want to do it, and we're going to talk to Phil and get Phil back. And that's just kind of how it happened. And so no, I didn't, I never replaced.
You're not a replacement guitar player.
No, I mean, I didn't even replace Phil because when I played with Dave, because Phil had been out of the band already for a while, and they'd already done an album as a 4-piece too. So I was just, I never replaced anybody. I didn't replace Dave. Phil had, when we got together, when me and Phil came in the band, or back to the band, it was just the new guard as far as the guitar players. We just had been in the band before. So yeah, it wasn't, because a lot of press, like Symbol of Salvation, they recruited former Odin guitar player Jeff Duncan, and they were like, no, that's really not how it went. That's really not how it was.
See, we know that as hardcore fans, but the press doesn't know that because they're just looking at face value. Yeah.
I think Symbol of Salvation is one of the best albums to come out of that era. I mean, that is a freaking solid album, man. And John Bush, I mean, we've said it on the show numerous times, probably one of the most underrated vocalists ever.
Don't get me started.
And you have a songwriting credit. I mean, didn't you write or co-write Last Train Home?
Yeah, Last Train Home, and the title track, Symbol of Salvation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is your this is your recorded debut with Armored Saint, and to me, it's it's a great record, man. So you not only showed up, you showed up big, man. And I mean, you made a splash. And so why didn't that album? We hear the story all the time. It's circumstances and whatnot. But in your opinion, why did that album not go bigger? Because it definitely had the goods.
Because it came out in 1991. I mean, bottom line.
Yeah.
The timing,
Sure.
and what was going on, the musical climate changed. I remember touring that. Excuse me. I remember touring that record was hard. It was it was a very rough tour. It's like, cause it was like, what's going on, and some shows were good, but there were shows that weren't, and it just, all of a sudden it all changed. And I think, had that album come out a couple of years sooner, it might've been a different story. I mean, you can say that kind of shit all day, who knows, but that, I think that's why, I mean, it came out in 1991. It wasn't the right time to put out a record like that was going to appeal to a massive audience, because it just had changed. That's the main reason. I mean, we had everything in place.
That's a very valid point. Very valid point. But in my opinion, for what it's worth, I think it's one of the best albums in the Armored Saint catalog, and it's one of the best, hard rock metal albums from that time period. So. And you got some MTV exposure out of it. I mean, it was, you guys were working it, man. And I always thought it deserved to do better than it did. But like you said, it was a changing landscape at the time. So
I'll always be, of course, at the time I didn't realize it, but I'll always be really grateful that my recording debut with Armored Saint was that record.
Yes.
Because there was a lot of that album had a lot of spirit, it was a lot of it was an emotional record, because we were doing a lot of the work that went into that was Dave's legacy, because a lot of that material he wrote, most of it was Dave's material.
Yeah.
So
I was out there recording the second Toys record, and I spent a day with you guys at the studio. I have a photo. Me and Chris McClernand were there at the same time, and there's a group photo of all you guys, and I don't know if Dave Jordan was in it, but there's a couple other knuckleheads and stuff. But it's like this spray of Headbanger, in this one photo. I have it somewhere. I'll have to dig it up. But everyone's just cheesing, I think John's in the middle, sitting in the director's chair or some shit. And
I remember you being there at El Dorado. And I remember you were there and you had just gotten your snake tattoo.
The Elton John tattoo on my chest.
You had just gotten that. Yep.
Yeah, that's a sign of the times, man. That's a good old 1990.
Well, I just want to say again, I think Symbol of Salvation rules.
It's a king.
Freaking
it's a
great
fucking
record.
king. The record is a king.
Yeah,
there's no doubt about it.
So, and let's jump forward to the last couple records. Very great records, also. Win Hands Down, Punching the Sky. I know that COVID had probably put the kibosh on some of the touring and the promotion, but again, I think these are two great records. And earlier you said Symbol of Salvation, it came out in 91 and sort of the grunge thing was taken over. But now, move forward all these years to Win Hands Down and Punching the Sky. Critically acclaimed records, very good records. So what do you think they deserve to do better than they did, or are you satisfied with what, the sales of it and the promotion and the reception that it received?
Well, they did do good. And we did a lot of touring on Win Hands Down, a lot of touring. And even in the middle of all that, did a Symbol of Salvation in its entirety.
That's right.
Run. It's kind of it's just different now in that we know, who our core following is. And plus also in the years, we we've done a lot of building the band in Europe. So we've established that, very well at this point. So we know, this is where it's different, is that we know who our audience is. And so, like When Hands Down, even going back to maybe Revelation, La Raza, for what we know as far as our base and what we do, those records have done well, particularly the last two. Yeah. So to us, it's not like, who the fuck goes platinum anymore? Nobody.
Right. Right.
So we don't look at it like that. We look at it based on our fan base. Are our fans still there? And the answer is yes, they absolutely are.
Yeah.
And we're always very grateful for that, So we don't put a whole lot of expectations on, or I don't anyway, of the band becoming like, the next Metallica or something like that. Right. It's cool. It's cool that we even are still here. That's how I see it. And that we have people who give a shit. It's just, we're very, very lucky in that respect, I think.
Great answer and great perspective. And I've seen you guys live in recent years, and you still fill the place and you still draw an audience. So, absolutely you're hitting your target audience, and that's all you can ask for. And I think that's great that you're still doing, You
guys have always been able to hold on to your people.
Yeah, for sure.
You're never letting anybody down because you guys must rehearse.
Well, we rehearse before we tour.
At least once in a while, yeah.
Yeah. You guys must rehearse. Yeah. That's the technique.
Yeah.
Jeff, you alluded to something earlier that I wanted to go back and touch on, if you don't mind. You talked about getting your act cleaned up, and you've been sober now for, I guess, decades. What was the catalyst for you? What made you get your act together, basically?
I was just tired of it. It wasn't really doing it for me anymore. And I just found myself in a position where I just didn't know how to stop. So I went and, started going to meetings and all that. And I was willing to stop, and I learned how to change some of my perspectives in that area. I mean, that's kind of the cliff notes of it.
Yeah.
And I just didn't want to, I just didn't see that was going to help me as far as what my aspirations were. And I don't know how I had that kind of clarity when I was 23, but it was definitely really clear. So that was really it. I just didn't think it was going to be something that was the way I was with it. I didn't see that it was going to benefit me in any way. I saw it getting worse. It wasn't going to, if anything, if I kept doing it, it would have gotten worse. But next Friday I'll have 33 years.
Amazing.
That's amazing.
Congratulations.
Nothing.
That's amazing. I only ask because I'm always, I don't want to use, I'll use the word impressed because that's my word and I'm going to use it. I know you don't feel that way about it, but I always am amazed that somebody in your line of work, and Jason's very much the same way. You guys are in the rock and roll business and you're surrounded by all this stuff all the time. And for you to just decide it's not for me anymore, it's not working, and to toe that line is pretty incredible. Because you got to be surrounded by temptation all the time.
Yeah, not really. I mean, I've had people say to me, "Oh, is it hard, on the road or whatever?" And it's like, there's a liquor store down the street. It doesn't matter. I really was just done with it. And temptation, it really doesn't exist. I just don't care. I don't want it. I just don't do it.
Well, good for you, man. That I'm happy to hear that. I'm glad it's working for you. Tell us about Wanderlust.
Wanderlust, definitely a labor of love, that record. Something I always wanted to do was a guitar instrumental record. And, but it was one of those things, where I was like, I don't want to do it until I feel like a skill level or a confidence level that I feel I could do something that, is right. So what I started doing was, I started doing some little demos at home and writing some instrumentals. And I was bringing them to a friend of mine out here, who I actually have a small label with now called Tone House Records. He's a, engineer and all that, guitar player guy, really great at what he does. And so I started bringing him my demos and recording on my little digital 8-track so he could kind of master them so they're the same level, really, so I could just listen to them and be like, cool, instrumental songs, this is fun, Yeah. And he was really digging the stuff. He's like, well, what are you going to do with this? And I'm like, I don't know, I'm just being creative, it's fun. And he's like, well, we should make a record, we'll worry about it later, let's make a record. So I'm like, all right. So I ended up recruiting a drummer out here that I know, a guy named Alex Papa, fantastic drummer. And we just made the record, and it came out really, really great, and it was so fun to make. And I think it was so enjoyable to make because, one, I was just this Bengali. Not that I do work well with others, but it was nice to just be able to whatever I want, my palette, so again, it was a labor of love. Like, I didn't care how many people bought it. I didn't care about any of that. It was just more about a personal accomplishment doing that. And it was fun too, because I really pushed myself, and Jason Constantine, who produced it with me and recorded it, he pushed me too. So there was a lot of growth I experienced not just as a guitar player, but as a musician making that record. Because when you write songs and it's just the guitar, that's the singer, that's a whole different world. Because then when the solo happens, it's got to be a little extra special because the guitar's going the whole time,
Yeah.
And making, and then translating a song on the guitar without words, but emoting, that's a whole nother skill level. You got to know when to hold back. You got to say something. So hopefully I accomplished that. But I understood that during the process, Yeah. So, and I look forward to making another one, which I will.
I was just going to ask, is there more of that in your future?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. I'll probably, that's the cool thing about that is I could do that into my 70s, man.
Yeah.
There's no singing involved, just playing guitar.
Speaking of singing, let's go back to John Bush leaving Armored Saint and joining Anthrax. What's going through your mind at that point?
Well, I was roommates with John at the time. So I was like one of the first guys that really knew what was going on. Was I at the time? Well, no, I was after. But anyway, I understood it at the time. I understood why he did it. He turned it down the first time.
Right.
But then we ended up doing then he got called again, and we ended up doing a couple of shows in Hawaii with Overkill. And I knew he was going to be doing it. So he was going to be joining Anthrax. So that last show we did in Hawaii, when we walked off stage, I was like just looking at the crowd and looking at the guy. I'm like, well, that's it. Wow. It was pretty weird. But I didn't blame him. I didn't, it was a great offer. And in my opinion, they were very smart to seek him out. Because he's John Bush. Yeah. So I understood. I don't think there was anybody in Armored Saint at the time who wouldn't have made a move like that. It was just, after the Symbol tour and everything that happened, and how that was, and how frustrating that was. Still
a strange time for rock music in general. Yeah. 93. Yeah. I was ironically in Hawaii when I found out that John accepted the offer.
Yeah.
Dan Corporal, God rest his soul. Dan Corporal, an old Armored Saint guitar tech, was actually out on the road with Dangerous Toys, and he was like, guess what? You're never going to guess. And he tells me. And I was like, whoa, so yeah, I was actually in Hawaii when I heard that. Very, very interesting.
Yeah. And those records John did with Anthrax are awesome.
Yeah. Strong.
Totally.
Very strong.
I think those albums.
I have a question. I want
Yeah.
to move into this as we go into our last sort of 15 minutes here. Listen, there's an Armored Saint feature film coming out at some point. What's it called? What's it about? Tell us the skinny on it.
Well, I'll tell you the little I know about it.
Okay.
Guy named Russell Charrington out of England. He's a big fan of Armored Saint. Put it together. And I think it's called like Band of Brothers or something like that.
Oh yeah, okay, all right.
I don't know when it's coming out. I've seen a version of it that needs some edits, but that's how it came about. He just did it really on his own, wanted to do it, and of course, he's skilled in that area of making film. So it's really cool that he put in so much time and effort and love into wanting to put the story of Armored Saint out there, because it's a pretty cool story, especially when you look into, that, particularly John and Joey and Gonzo, how they, those guys went to elementary school together. It's crazy, I don't know anybody I went to elementary school with, never mind playing in a band with them for decades and touring the world, it's crazy.
That's
right.
That's
and even
not a lot of bands can say that unless they're brothers,
Right, and even my history. I mean, I've known those guys since I was probably 17. We go way back.
Yeah, that's way back.
Tell us a little bit about DC4.
Yes.
DC4. We've done 4 albums and an EP. It's really cool thing. It was I became the singer of that by default. Because I wrote these songs and did the demos, and I just sang on them, and then we ended up. I wanted another guitar player. We had a guy initially, Highland Church. Eventually, we had Rowan Robertson for the next 3 records. But when we got the other guitar player in the beginning, I was like, okay, cool, it sounds great. So find a singer. My brothers were like, well, we thought you were going to do it because I'll give it a shot. So that's how that happened. I think we've made some really good records, and we may again. Right now, it's kind of on the back burner because I'm writing material right now with a singer, a guy named Mark Weitz, who is a fantastic singer, and we're writing some really cool stuff. So kind of doing that right now, and DC4, we may do something. Who knows? It's not like dismantled or anything. It's just that's what I'm doing right now, and my brother's involved with that, of course.
Yeah.
What was your approach to? You said you sang by default. How did you approach singing for the first time? Was it scary? Was it something you just went and tackled head on, or tell us a little bit about that, because that's kind of got to be out of your wheelhouse, obviously, but.
Well, it wasn't. I mean, I was, saying like, Armored Saint, I've always been kind of like the high voice behind John, so I knew how to yell into a microphone.
Okay.
But yeah, I did have to learn how to, be a lead singer, which is a whole nother thing. I had to learn more about singing, about, saving my voice during shows, different, I mean, Jason knows what I'm talking. I had to learn all that stuff, which I learned later on in the game. I was probably about 30 when I started singing in a band. So, but I wasn't scared of it. I was actually kind of empowered that my brothers thought I sounded good enough to do it.
Yeah.
Because I was just writing the songs. I figured I'd show them to a singer, and they were like, "No, you do it," and that. So. But I'm glad I did it, because now it's something else I know how to do,
right?
Which is cool, So I could sing, harmony vocals with the best of them at this point,
Yeah.
But I'll always be a guitar guy first. I mean, that's just a fact. I'll always be a guitar player. That's my passion. That's what I love.
What got you? What do you think made you decide that the guitar was going to be your voice? Ironically, as we could say it.
Starting out, you mean?
Yeah, like what you're in your humble beginnings as a child, basically. When was it? How old were you? Who did you hear that blew you away? It's like I want to learn how to do that. I mean,
Well, it was
I can guess who it was, but it might have been somebody a little bit earlier, you know.
well, I was about 9,
Okay.
and it was really my dad. You know, my dad was a
Wow.
musician, and he had a hit. He had a gold record in the early '60s. I had old surf tune.
Wow.
Let's go, right? My dad wrote that.
Wow.
And he played guitar. He wasn't a lead guitar player, but he played chords. And
What's the name of the
I was
song?
just,
Let's Go? Called Let's Go? What's the
go.
name of the song?
Let's go.
Okay. What's the
Wow.
name of the artist?
The hit was by a band called the Routers, and then the Ventures recorded it too.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, it's a big hit.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude.
We still get royalties for it. It's amazing.
Wow.
So he played guitar, and I just found it as soon as I saw it. I just intrigued by it.
Yeah.
I just thought it was cool. And my dad, when he played guitar, I'd go sit on the floor and watch him play, and I think he thought I was listening to him, but I was watching his fingers in the neck.
Yeah.
And one day he just said, "You like the guitar, don't you?" And I'm like, yeah. And he sat me up and he showed me an E chord. And even at that age, man, as soon as I'm not lying, he showed me where to put my fingers, and I went, crystal clear. It just felt right.
Wow.
It was just something I was supposed to do. So once I knew that, my cousin brought over this little acoustic guitar for me, and I just walked around the house banging that E chord for probably months, and it just kind of went from there. So it was pretty early on, And then my dad would have his band rehearsals, and I'd go and I'd always sit in front of the lead guitar guy and watch him, bug him, and ask him questions.
Yeah. So you had like a live-in sort of obvious teacher. There were musicians hanging around your house all the time. So
yeah, I was real lucky, because when I started meeting guys in school and stuff who were like, "Oh, my parents don't want me to be a musician," and this and that. I was like, why not? I
Right.
didn't compute to me.
Yeah.
Why not? Oh, they think I need to, get a real job. I'm like, well, yeah, but then you you practice, and then that's your job, and then you become like these guys who do it. You know what I mean? Like, it is a job.
yeah, I mean, I've never thought of it being like, always your number one, but you do have to have something else to fall back on. I mean, you can't just end up being, a street urchin who happens to
Right.
be
Well,
a
no,
guitar.
of course not. Of
You have
course
to
not.
do what you need to do in order to feed your passion. You have
Right.
to, right. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But I think that really the point of it was what do I want to put my time into as far as what's going to fulfill me and what's going to make me happy.
Right.
So if I would have done, 8 years in college or something like that to pursue some career I didn't really want to do, well, I wouldn't really be happy, would I? I might make more money.
That's probably 4 or 5 years you could have used to, have disposable jobs. I'm sorry, not income, disposable jobs that just are flags of in between things. And what I mean by
Right.
you're in between things, you're working a crappy job for the months that you're working on a new record that you're going to probably go into the studio and record with the money you're making from a shitty job.
Right.
You're
Right.
living off of that shitty job. So it's actually feeding your passion. And that's what I meant. It's just another version of something that I need to make a bumper sticker. Use your fucking resources. You're not dead.
Yeah.
You can walk. You have 2 hands. You can flip a burger. You can make a cup of coffee. You can dig a ditch. Whatever it takes so you can play guitar or sing or write a song or whatever it is.
Right.
That
And
you know
always,
that you have to do to be happy.
well, yeah, and always practice. Always try and get better at what you
Yes.
do. I mean, that's really important because, let's say if you're sucking, it's all for naught. You got to be decent enough to even be at the starting gate. And even once you're at the starting gate, that's a tough ride. So you better be like trying to get your shit down.
Yeah.
I tell young guys that all the time. Like, you gotta be good at what you do, because then you'll just always be a dreamer.
Yeah.
You won't be a doer. You'll be a dreamer if you're not cutting it at what you do.
Yeah.
Even if you're not really the best musician, what's your ambition? What's your business plan? How are your songs? All of those things are just so important. And again, even if you are great, you get to the starting gate, that gets you to the starting gate, and then it's like, who knows, man? But if you're not, you're just wasting your time, and maybe you should do something else. Sounds kind of harsh, I guess, but that's just my experience.
Out of all the things you've done, Jeff, touring especially, I'm going to focus on touring. And has there ever been a moment where when you're on stage and you're looking around and going, "Oh my God, I can't believe I'm doing this"? Like a massive crowd, or opening for somebody, or headlining, or was there ever a pinch me moment? I can't believe I'm doing this.
Well, I mean, it's kind of always like that, because I'm so grateful that I'm still here. But I remember it was in the Symbol Salvation era. We did a couple of weeks, I think, in Europe with Scorpions. That was when they were doing the Winds of Change, like that album, whatever that was. And it was all sold out arenas. And I remember, I think it was Tainted Past. There was one song where I started off on the acoustic, and I had the acoustic on a stand and the electric guitar hanging behind me. And I remember doing this intro, and the spotlight's on me. Boom, boom, boom. It's arena stage, packed. And I looked up, and it's all the lighters, the packed arena lighters, and it's just me, and I'm that guy. And I remember at that point in time, I thought to myself, if it stops here, cool. Everything's gravy after this.
That's pure.
Because I wanted to get from that seat to that spot when I was young. That was the journey, right?
Yeah.
And there I was for that moment in time. So to me, and it's still like that. Like that was, everything else after that was gravy.
Yeah.
But but it's still like we'll do like pack show or whatever, and people are totally into it. It's still like, wow, it's so cool. We still get to do this. How awesome that we're still doing this. We still sound good. Everybody's in good health. But as far as that one moment you're asking me about, it was definitely that at that point in time, where I was like, okay, after this, it's all good. I'll never bitch about anything, man.
Yeah, the rest of this shit, the work has been done. The rest of this shit is free as long as I stay in shape and practice.
Well, yeah, I take it back to like when me and my buddy went to see Motley Crue in the club, and we were like, oh wow, how did I get from that kid to that spot at that point in time? So it's there's guys play circles around me that never experienced a moment like that.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm keenly aware of that fact, So I just try and stay grateful,
You dreamed it, and you made it happen with how you're surmounting passion, and you put your heart and soul and your head and your family support definitely helped, and you just being someone that other people enjoy working with is a big one as well. And this is a good time for us to sort of wrap this up, unfortunately, but we just went full circle from the question Dave asked earlier, about you guys being kids scalping tickets, and then somebody coming up to you. I just picture William Howell coming up to you when you describe the guy. Y'all need to go see
he's kind of like that.
Yeah.
I'll never forget that guy, because he was an important guy in my life. That guy, whoever he was.
He was the angel. He was the heavy metal angel coming to save you.
Yeah. Here's where you go. Here's where you go to get the inspiration to start.
That's right. He sent you on. It was like the pick of destiny. But here's the deal is you never took it for granted, and you do not take it for granted. Jeff, it's been fucking awesome hanging with you today and talking to you today about this whole thing and just your journey and your real heart.
And thank you for sharing this story about that moment on stage when you're opening for the Scorpions, because I live for stuff like that. That's pure gold, man, because I'm the guy that's never going to have that moment. I'm a frustrated musician, so I'm never going to have that on-stage moment. And I love the fact that you recognize it and it's filed away in your brain. And as soon as I ask that question, you know exactly what I'm talking about, because it lives in your heart and it's there forever and no one can ever take that away. And I think that's pure gold, man.
Yeah, well, it was definitely a moment that I remembered, because to me it was just like a miracle. I couldn't believe I was that guy right there at that point, Yeah, I mean, really, how did this happen? But so again, anything after that was just like, hey, man, I feel very fortunate,
Yeah.
Real quick, in 30 seconds or so, tell us what's next for Armored Saint.
We start at the end of October, doing 6.5 weeks in the States with WASP.
Oh, right. Okay.
Some of the dates have Michael Schenker on them.
Yeah, Michael Schenker's on, I think, 4 shows. So we got that coming up. So we're excited. What's going on after that? I have I hear there's some irons in the fire, but I know that's what we're definitely doing coming up here. So it'll be nice to be out on the road again. I mean, after all that crap, everything. So we're really looking forward to it.
Joey's hooking up with the King. He's going out with Merciful Fate.
Yeah, he's doing the Merciful Fate reunion shows. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing.
Jeff,
really,
man,
really cool.
Thanks so much for being with us today, man. I love your humility and I love your stories, and I love the fact that you truly appreciate what you do and you recognize it as being a privilege to do what you do and make a living at it. And for what it's worth, I'll say it again: Symbol of Salvation is a awesome record, and you're part of it. So thank you for that record and everything else you do. And thanks for joining us today, man. This was a lot of fun. Enjoyed talking to you.
Yeah. Thanks for all the kind words, guys. And hope we see you in Texas when we're out there.
Yeah, we'll look for you on that WASP tour when you come around in the fall.
Yeah. Some of the guys in the band, so, just let us know what's up if you're coming.
Right on.
That's going to happen.
Yeah.
Jeff, thank you so much. On behalf of my co-host, Jason McMaster, I'm Metal Dave with our special guest, Jeff Duncan, today on the Talk Louder podcast.